Hello guys, it's the Peep King finally back online and ready to roll. We're going to get through this together, do the best we can. Maybe I'll make some videos of myself as well, but for the most part you'll get just the PowerPoints here. Obviously we've got a lot of material that we're still trying to get through the rest of the semester, and we'll do the best we can. Obviously I talk fast for a lot of people, and so hopefully you will get a chance to slow me down by stopping the slides and going back and listening. Did he really say that? Wow, Flood, you're a little crazy. But don't forget, you can always call or text me if you have questions or anything comes up. Just let me know. So our first lesson that's online here, part one of the things dealing with firearm identification, which would be the types of guns and types of ammunition. And then we'll move on to things related to different kinds of tool marks and things like that. And this week in your lab, you will be doing some identification of cartridge cases as part of your lab activity. You can also expect to get a box this week. Hopefully you've already gotten it, and that'll be for some coming weeks activities as well for lab situation. So obviously most of you, it's not Monday because you're probably watching this some other time, but this would be our first Monday of the semester here online, so let's get after it. And I know that some of you may enjoy my memes, others of you might not. It's okay. Just scroll through them. That's the great part in the online world. You can just go right past this slide if this whole topic triggers you. There's a video you can watch or not watch. It's just kind of some cool differences between some kinds of ammunition, and it's a person kind of shooting up skillets and things. It's kind of funny to watch a little bit, but kind of interesting to see some of the differences as well. So please feel free to stop and watch the video and come back and see me again. So in terms of what we're really trying to do and what we're really trying to accomplish is to look for tool marks. Okay, so ammunition and guns together, there is this interaction between the gun and the ammunition, and it leaves scratches and all kinds of imperfections that get transferred from the harder metal in the gun to the bullet. Also, you get the interaction of the cartridge casing, as we'll talk about, a little bit easier to do. But for tool marks in general, it could be any kind of tool. We all know what my favorite tool is, and if you don't know, you better go look that up or try to figure that out somewhere, because that might be a bonus question. You know what my favorite tool is. So hopefully we can know that it can be used for all kinds of things, but it's just a single tool. Not like Claire wants to give me a multi-tool, but it's just a single tool. Tire tracks, shoe impressions, things like that also have imperfections, and hopefully we can be able to make some comparisons. So our goal is to find unique features that make the tool mark or the impression individualized. And so when we're talking about firearms, we're talking about, can we tie in a round of ammunition to the the gun that it was fired from? And so that's our really major goal. But in order to get to that point, we have to look a little bit more about types of guns, type of ammunition to begin with, and then we'll look at some of the different types of tool marks, and also we'll look at gunshot residue in future presentations. So as you can tell, quite a bit of stuff in some of these different topics that we're going to be. And a lot of people in West Virginia, are in love with their guns. So hopefully they can find some joy in this topic. So again, our main thing would be that these firearms are manufactured. The firearms then leave these irregular markings on the cartridge casing. They also leave it on the bullet as you're going through, and that's what we're trying to look for, those random imperfections and irregularities. And the biggest things that are going to be compared, as we mentioned, are bullets and cartridge cases. In case you didn't know, we will talk about that here in this lecture. What is the difference, and why and how are those things named differently? So a bullet in a cartridge case along with the gunpowder are all together is called ammunition, just to kind of clear that up ahead of time. So we are looking for a transfer, a tool impression to be left on bullets and cartridge cases, because the bullet and cartridge case are a metal that's not quite as dense as the metal in the gun. And so we're going to, that contact can then help us tie something that's been fired to a particular weapon. So given times as hard as now, maybe if you have a good stockpile of toilet paper, hopefully people might be looking for toilet paper if you don't have that. So just be careful in case you run into this person who might not give you a warning shot. So some of the very brief background on forensic firearm identification includes one of the first cases that was documented for trying to tie a bullet back to a particular weapon that was fired was in 1835, when they were able to take the bullet and test that, make a comparison in a homicide case. Interesting as well, the Stonewall Jackson is kind of a famous figure in West Virginia. In 1863, they looked at the bullet type and design and showed that it was sort of friendly fire that killed him. In 1879, there was distinctive markings left from what's the process called rifling. We'll talk about manufacture of firearms, and that was used in a court case to show some differences between two revolvers and how those markings were specific to an individual gun. And the most recent was basically looking at and comparing cartridge cases and bullets using a comparison microscope, which is basically two microscopes hooked together, and then you can look at them side by side, and you'll practice that a little bit with your lab activity as we're doing that online this particular week. So we're going to look at and investigate a little bit in terms of the different types of firearms. Hopefully, two types of firearms that are here you could easily identify, as the first being a semi-automatic pistol, and that's a repeating firearm. And once you pull the trigger, you're going to have to then release the trigger each time. If it's an automatic pistol, then you can pull that trigger and it's going to keep firing until you release. So there is basically back here a firing pin that we'll talk about that's going to hit the ammunition that's here in the chamber. The thing below here is a revolver, and that's a firearm that has a cylinder that rotates like the good old westerns, and each time the hammer here gets pulled back and hits the primer part of the ammunition, then this chamber has to rotate in order for the next bullet to next round of ammunition to be put into place. If it's a double action, then as you pull back on the trigger, you're setting the hammer and releasing at the same time. Some of the older ones you had to pull this on manually. But a revolver has this rotating chamber. Then we look at here again a single action revolver, and that is where the action has to have a manual cocking of the hammer, and hopefully then the pulling of the trigger only releases the hammer so that it can hit the bullet. The bottom case here is a rifle, obviously not a handgun like we've seen. Excuse me. A bolt action rifle is manually loaded here, and as you're sort of using this rifle here, then the bolt action occurs here where the person's hand is, so that you can then properly fire your weapon. Here also we see two other kinds of rifles. A lever action rifle, and that is the mechanism is cycled by what is termed a receiver, and what more people think of when they think of these cool firearms are a slide action. And the slide action is where as you're moving this piece here, that it actually is it's also known as pump action. You're basically getting rid of the bullet that's been fired and putting the next one into the chamber. So we have different kinds of handguns, we have different kinds of rifles, and we also have, of course, shotguns, and we'll leave that more to the end because not as likely that shotguns are going to be used in most crimes. So if we look at something like this particular handgun here, hopefully we know, yes, pistol, and this portion right here is known as the slide, the barrel, which hopefully you never look at the barrel whether you think it's loaded or not, because if you accidentally fire and shoot yourself in the face, not a good design. The extractor, that's the part that's then getting rid of, helping to get rid of the cartridge casing after the ammunition has been fired. Pulling the trigger is then what causes this hammer thing to go back here and then sort of spring loaded, if you will, and hit the ammunition and cause the firing. And hopefully then there's also a safety there that's important in case you automatic hit the trigger accidentally. You don't want to always for that to be fired, so having a safety there is good. A lot of people will say, well, the safety was on or the safety was defective, and that's a distinct possibility in terms of some types of defense, but it's not a great strategy for most cases because most of these safeties work. If we look inside the pistol, Then we see the firing chamber here where the ammunition would happen. And the breech face is one of the most important parts that we should be aware of in terms of a part that's going to be helping us identify this particular weapon. The ejector here is an important thing in terms of, as I mentioned, ejecting the cartridge casing. In the center of the breech face is where the hammer, which is connected to the firing pin. This is the opening. Aperture is just opening. The firing pin is here, and it's connected usually to the hammer. And then there's also this extractor that is important in terms of sort of helping to get the cartridge casing out of this chamber. So once everything has been fired, then you're going to want to try to throw this thing out, and that's why it gets left at the crime scene a lot of times when this automatic or semi-automatic weapon is used, because they don't go back and pick up the casings. They just get thrown out onto the ground, and they usually leave them there. If we're looking at revolver, again, we have some of the unique things as well as some comparatives here. We have a cylinder where we have the chamber located, obviously the trigger, the hammer being the same, and the barrel, and our breech face, which is going to come into contact with the base of the ammunition, and the firing pin, which is hooked in again. So this is the opening, and the firing pin is going to stick through, and as the trigger is pulled, then we're going to have the firing pin end up hitting the primer part of the ammunition. So if we looked at some of the different kinds of ammunition, then we see the three main parts of ammunition here. So most people say this is a bullet. This is actually more what would be considered ammunition. This is the bullet. This is the gunpowder. This is the cartridge. So some people also can say this is an unfired cartridge, but it's really technically better consider this a type of ammunition with the bullet, the gunpowder, which is going to cause the explosion and cause the bullet to leave the chamber case, the cartridge case. And so there's going to be a lot of marks left here, there's going to be a lot of marks left here. These things are going to burn up, and then this is what's going to be analyzed for gunshot residue, GSR. The initiation, that firing pin is going to hit a place called the primer. That's going to initiate this controlled explosion, also known as a gunshot. And as we look through some of the cases, in case you didn't know about different kinds of ammunition, you still have the casing, you still have the bullet, but this one is particularly destructive if you're really wanting to harm someone or something, and don't care about eating its flesh or anything like that. You do this hollow point. When it hits, it goes into this almost snake-like configuration that really can tear up the target in this case. And so this would never be used for target practice. It would be used if you're really trying to hurt something that you're shooting at. So before we go on to looking at other things, let's look at shotguns just a little bit, and especially the things associated with ammunition, which is kind of interesting that a lot of people don't understand what is going on here. This is what's known as a shotgun shell or a shot shell, and it's a cartridge that, in this case, this can be plastic or perhaps paper material. It could also be metal here, but usually it's some kind of plastic or paper, and then the base is metal. But if you cut this away, what you see inside is a bunch of little pellets or pebbles. It can be lead, steel, bismuth, any kind of different material that makes up And this thing right here is a little cup that gets shot, and this plastic cup is known as the wadding. And so this basically, it's like you taking a red Solo cup at a party and throwing it at somebody. That's the equivalent of what is happening. If you have ever shot a shotgun, you will know that this thing will be out in front of the barrel towards your target. And you may or may not find this. Gets kicked out of the chamber then. But basically, you're throwing a cup and you've got some metal balls in it, and these metal balls are going to travel, and hopefully a large portion of them will hit your target and do the damage you're interested in. But usually you're not going to do shooting with this kind of thing, ammunition. So our comparatives, again, you still have the same features. We have primer here, which is where the firing pin is going to hit, initiate our gunpowder to release. In this case, we've got the wadding and the plastic cup portion with shot in here. Here, though, we have the cartridge case out here and the bullet. And so instead of throwing this cup out, we're throwing this metal bullet out in terms of either a handgun or a rifle would use something like this on the left versus a shotgun would use something like this on the right. So we're going to look at a few different kinds of ammunition and cover those in brief just to kind of show you what some of those things are and how they're used. You may or may not have seen all kinds of different things, but again, here you've got your cartridge case and then your bullet here. You may see mixtures of different colors because of different compositions of metals there. But in this case, this cartridge casing then would fit into the chamber, and then you would only shoot. You have a lot of room here for gunpowder, so obviously this thing would shoot. This bottleneck cartridge would shoot really powerful, and it's called this bottleneck because of the design here that makes a smaller diameter at the neck. And a second type here that we see, again, the cartridge case and the bullet portion, and this is known as rimfire. Oh, I'm so sorry, guys. Struggling a little bit with a sinus infection. Luckily, not the corona, so we're good. Rimfire is one that has some priming compound around the base down here, not necessarily just sort of a primer area, but sort of really around the base. Part of the types of ammunition, you should never really go on only the information, but the information that you'll see, the caliber gauge, the manufacturer a lot of times will put information here. It's a 9mm type of ammunition. So these things would be important when not in comparing so much as just knowing what kind of information is here, what kind of ammunition it was, what kind of likely firearm it was used, and then you'd want to recreate that. So having a head stamp here and having, especially knowing what the composition of the primer was, would be pretty important. But you see here, you don't see any kind of specific primer down here. This is the same kind of design. Hopefully you don't know anyone who needs this kind of a gun, but if you do, it's a joke. And hopefully none of you are attempting to use any kind of firearms in this kind of way. You know, it is spring coming up here. Spiders are all around, so hopefully you can find another option and not this one. So back to different kinds of bullets. What is called a full metal jacket. You may have heard that term before, but not fully understood. And that is that there's an entire covering over the bullet, with usually the exception of the base, that leads to that particular way of listing this kind of ammunition. A soft point jacketed, so this has sort of a jacket covering, but not over the tip especially. This bullet, as it says, has a lead core. It's exposed. It's not covered up like the previous one, but it does have some kind of covering here. So it's a jacket with like the head of a person here and a jacket. The other one was the jacket all the way up like a hoodie kind of thing. And you may have seen the kind of stamping and things like that that's going on in several of these kind of bullets. And that's the cannular, and that is the groove that goes around and typically helps hold this center and this outer jacket kind of together. You'll find these typically on either revolver or rifle bullets in many cases. Just a way that the manufacturer kind of holds the ammunition together. We talked about a hollow point. It is hollow here. As it hits the target, it's going to start slicing and dicing like a Ginsu knife. I know you guys don't know what Ginsu knives are, but that's okay. You'll get it one of these days. But what we see here is this jacket, and then we've got this soft core, but it's not solid. It's like biting into one of those stupid bunny rabbits that are hollow at Easter time, and it's really disappointing. Except for this case, it's really disappointing because you're probably going to end up with much more damage and destruction if you get shot with something like this. So if someone shoots you like this, this kind of ammunition, they really hurt you. If you want to do more like target practice, then you might choose something like this, a lead round nose type of ammunition. In this case, just the bullet part, and it's elongated, and it's got this rounded nose. Also, another one that's used a lot of times in target practice is what is known as a wad cutter, or in this case a semi-wad cutter, and that is a truncated nose here that has a sharp shoulder. A regular wad cutter does not have that shoulder there, and again, it's going to be useful in target practice. So each of those last three were more so used in a design of target practice. A boat tail, that's going to be tapered or truncated here at the base. So the cartridge case would be here. The tip, this is going to be moving to your right here, and some people believe this kind of design helps stabilize, like you would steer a boat. You can kind of steer a bullet